Morning, morning. Shut up! Morning, everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. The sheep aren't happy. I'm not happy. Bugsy's not happy. The cows aren't happy. The bulls aren't happy because we're all soaking wet. It's a miserable day. Everyone's trying to find shelter under trees with no leaves. And generally, no one wants to be outside. There's always a bull market somewhere. The Ducks win again. Today is a day for the Ducks, ladies and gentlemen. I see them over there a minute ago swooping in to these makeshift lakes that have been caused by the flooding of these lower parts of Surrey. And guess what? They're happy. They're having a whale of a time. Having a right old quack. Anyway, I hope you are like the ducks today and not like the sheep. I hope you're happy and healthy doing the things you love. Please do me a favour, guys. Smash the like button for me. Smash the subscribe button if you haven't already. Smash the notification bell. And drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's video. Quick shout out to the latest subscribers that are coming in. It's madness. Every day there's like an extra 50 or 60 subscribers right now. Welcome to you all. Really appreciate your support. And welcome back to everybody that's been around here for a while. I hope to try and bring you as interesting content as I can think to talk about as we go through the remainder of the season. But guys, there really isn't that much to talk about today. I don't really want to talk about the Brighton game because at the end of the day, we got away with one, right? We did get away with one. The VAR is an absolute joke. Brighton fans must be furious. You know, and all I would say is that as a Tottenham fan, you know, yes, you hold your hand up and say that they were robbed of decisions, or at least one decision. Some people were saying there was 5 decisions that should have gone their way. I think that's absolute nonsense. I think one is clear and obvious, and then there's 2 or 3 that were 50-50s, but ultimately I don't think you can really blame or be too upset about those ones. Apart from the penalty one was ludicrous. Look, it's a good game of football generally. Brighton are an absolutely phenomenal team. They've got such balance in their side. They can go down the left, they can go down the right, they can go through the middle. The only thing that they really are missing is a top striker. If they had a top striker in their team, then they will be a forever force to be reckoned with for at least the time being. And maybe they have one emerging in the Evan Ferguson tale. This 18-year-old big, strapping, strong lad from Ireland. Just another wonderful piece of scouting from a team who are rewriting the rule book on how to scout their talent. And it got me to thinking, what is their model? How do they do it? How did Brentford do it? How were Leicester doing it? And how far back do you really have to go to find other examples of teams that had phenomenal abilities to scout and sell on players and remain sustainably or financially sustainable through their scouting models? And you can go back and include Southampton in that. You could probably go a little bit further back and look at Swansea as another example. And so I started to do some research last night into what those models look like and how similar were they to each other, and how similar are they to what Tottenham do or what some of the other bigger clubs do. Is there a reason that they can do what they do in the way that they do it that bigger clubs can't? Do they have some magic formula that is secret sauce that's, you know, that you can't replicate? And I spent a long time last night reading through dozens of articles, and it's fascinating. And I think that there are some stark differences that are things that Tottenham can emulate if they wanted to. And I'm going to put together a longer video on this, because it will be a long video to go through everything. And this will take a week or so, I think, to me to build it. But to give you some examples of why Brentford and Brighton right now are kind of doing things a little bit differently. So it's interesting, right, that Tony Bloom, who owns Brighton, and Matthew Benham, Benham, I think his name is Benham or Benham, Matthew Benham, who owns Brentford. Well, they used to work together. They used to be partners in the same company, the company that Tony Bloom owns, which is called Star Lizard, which is a data-based sports betting syndicate software that is apparently absolutely insanely talented and efficient at identifying outcomes in sports matches, and that they use the financial backing of very wealthy individuals who will give them between 5 and 15 million pound, and they will put that money together with other wealthy individuals and will use that software and the secret sauce that it has within it to identify, as I say, loopholes or arbitration opportunities, or just more predictable outcomes where the odds on those outcomes have higher value than they should. And so by placing money on them, you're going to have better returns for the probability of the risk that you're taking. And apparently it is a phenomenal system that takes in a gazillion different data points on a gazillion different things. And Star Lizard is the business that Brighton owns, and it's the same software, or in part the same software, that is correlated alongside things like Opta and other data systems and softwares that are available to anybody and everybody to use as part of their Moneyball system, where they can identify the talent that may suit the solutions that they need for the next players to come through to replace the players that do well at Brighton and then are sold on. Apparently they already have the next 3 versions of Caicedo identified and that will come through. Apparently this Brighton outfit already have this thing called depth charts in place, where they are monitoring the output not only of the players, not only of the coaching staff, but everybody in the club, down to the social media guy, and that they understand what's working and what's not working, and then use those points of data to then scour the world for people to come in and replace those people when the time is right. It's an incredibly scientific based operation that is going to be difficult to replicate unless someone like Tottenham was to go out there and spend money on buying a fledgling data company that is sports based and that tries to replicate or emulate what Star Lizard does. And when I mentioned Brentford and I mentioned Matthew Blenheim, he did exactly that. When he left Brighton, he had a massive fallout with Tony Bloom and walked away, got involved with Brentford, but he started his own company called Smart Odds, which essentially does exactly the same thing for all intents and purposes as what Tony Bloom's does, Star Lizard. And that is one of the reasons why Brentford are also incredibly talented at talent acquisition and the prior stage of that, which is talent ID. How to identify the players that fit the mold and the utility that you need. It's a super, super interesting topic for me, and having read into it, it's why I'm now going to spend a lot more time putting together a bigger kind of video on it. So please let me know if you're interested in this kind of stuff. But what I would say is there's one other thing, one other element to their model that Benfica share and Brentford share, and that Southampton shared all the way back when they were finding the likes of Gareth Bale and Swansea back in the day, who were really the originators of the kind of identify, mould, develop, move on. And the one thing that they do differently, which is immediately swappable if Tottenham wanted to do it, is that they don't use their scouts the same way that we do. Our scouts, and most teams, employ scouts and instruct them to identify players that may or may not be suitable for their teams that they work for by geography. So Tottenham have, scouts out in maybe Asia, certainly South America. We spoke previously about the scout that was out in South America, I forget his name off the top of my head, who leaked the story about the goalkeeper from Chile, ended up getting sacked. So we have scouts that are out in geographical regions that are looking for talented players in any specific position. Just find the talent and then we'll put them on the shortlist. Keep an eye on them and then see where we go. What Brighton do, and Brentford, and what Southampton were doing back in the day, and Leicester and Swansea, is they have scouts by position. They have a scout that is just looking at goalkeepers. They have a scout that is just looking for strikers. They have a scout that is just looking for fullbacks, wingbacks, defenders, whatever. And they don't have a geographical region. They are utilising the data that is available through the combination of things like their Star Lizard program and the Opta Index and all of those different stats bomb programs that you can go and purchase to identify players in certain specific positions, and then that scout or that team of scouts that focus on those positions will then go and examine those players and find out whether or not the eye test fits the stats test. And it makes me kind of smile and chuckle a little bit because it goes back to the old argument that we have amongst ourselves all the time around what is more important, the seeing eye test or stats. Some people think that stats are everything and they tell the truth and they're undeniable. Other people think that they are worthless in and of themselves. And other people think that, it should be the eye test first that is then supported and complemented by the stats to make sure that your eyes are not deceiving you. Brighton go with the stats first. Then they send it over to the scouts. And then between them, if they come to the same conclusion, they'll then add them to the shortlist. It's a different way of doing it. It's a very interesting way of doing it. The consequences or the challenges of that method are that it's going to be more expensive to be sending scouts around the world, everywhere and anywhere, to go and watch these kids play. But if you have a higher track record of identifying the talent by doing it that way, letting the player come in, sending him out on loan to clubs where they can learn the right style, the right system. And I'll tell you again, Brighton have got a very good model where they work with specific clubs in Belgium. I think one's called Beerschot, who play the same way that Brighton play in a league that has similar styles of football generally to the Premier League, obviously lower quality, and they'll let the players learn over there before coming over. Good relationships. They don't own those clubs. Like Tottenham's owners, ENIC used to own Slavia Prague and Rangers and AEK Athens and all that stuff. And Manchester City have the City Football Group, where they have all those feeders. Brighton don't have that. They just have relationships that they work with. They work well with around Europe and elsewhere. Anyway, I'm getting off the topic. My point is, guys, that it's a fascinating insight. And there are lessons that Tottenham can learn. The cost of doing it the Brighton way from a scouting perspective is probably, quite substantial. However, as I say, if you have a track record of getting your acquisition right, then the model pays for itself 1,000 times over. And think how much money Brighton have made in the last few years by selling players that have only been with them for, less than a year and a half, maybe 2 years tops. Yves Bissouma, Cucurella, and everybody else that I'll be talking about in the video. The thing for me is, the overriding issue for me is that all of those stories of teams that have used this model before eventually run out of juice. They eventually can't find the next guy to make it sustainable. Southampton are about to be relegated. Leicester are probably about to be relegated, or could be. Swansea are now down in the Championship. I think maybe even League One, or no, the Championship. I'm not sure. Championship. the system works until it doesn't. Brentford and Brighton are right now on the crest of a wave. But at some point, when you want to go to that next step, you may have to transition yourself from being a selling club into a club that keeps its talent. And if you do that, then it also takes away the added incentive for young players to want to come to your club, because they've seen the progress and the pathway forward from the people that have gone before them. But if that model changes and you no longer become a selling club and you become a club where you develop players and they stay and harvest the returns of that player in your team for a longer period of time, then suddenly there's a pathway that is blocked for the next crop to come through. And ultimately that might disincentivize the next crop of players to come in when the story doesn't seem so easy for them as it was for the ones before. It's a fascinating, in-depth topic to me, guys. I'm going to talk about it over, probably a 45-minute video, and we're going to go through the reasons why, the examples of how it works, and the track records of what Brighton and Brentford are doing with finding these players like Mitoma in Japan, and that the amount of players that they've got coming over from Ecuador. It's absolutely fascinating. So if you're interested, let me know, like the video, hit the subscribe, drop a comment, and I'll see you on the next one. As always, guys, come on you Spurs.